think that we are free individuals. The Tällberg Winter Forum is a place for dialogue. One of the preconditions for a constructive dialogue is that all participants feel free to express their views. They need to feel free to think in their own way, and they need to feel free to express what they think to others. But is to feel free the same thing as to actually be free? The more I think about human freedom, the more complicated this matter becomes. Here at the Sigtuna Foundation, we have a cross-disciplinary dialogue group that meets every 2 weeks to discuss the issue of human freedom and human responsibility. Much of the scientific data we have today tend to indicate that the notion of human freedom and free will is an illusion. For example, there are studies showing that the neural signal to act comes before our conscious awareness about this act. This implies that our actions are the results of neural systems as such, and not of our conscience or of our will. Such empirical data have been used as the point of departure for arguments against the notion of human freedom. I will not go deeper now into the scientific discussion about human freedom. Here it might be sufficient to note that most of us experience that we have some degree of freedom, and that this is the point of departure from my reflection here. This brings us back to the question I have already stated: is to feel free the same thing as to actually be free? We all strive for human authenticity. We want to find out who we are, and we want to think and act based on our own ideas and values. Human authenticity should not, however, be misunderstood as absolute independence. As human beings, we will never be completely free in relation to one another. We actually become human and develop our own individual identity in the process of interaction with one another. Moreover, we will never be completely free in relation to nature. We are part of nature, and thus we are also naturally dependent on the nature of which we are part. The fact that we depend on the people we have around us is, of course, a limitation to our freedom. However, this also illustrates a way through which we can continue to develop who we are. If we become who we are through interaction, we can continue to develop ourselves through interaction. This is why venues like the Tällberg Forum and the Sigtuna Foundation are so important. Here we have an opportunity to engage in dialogue with people from other parts of society and from other parts of the world. As we enter into this dialogue, with interest in what others have to say, and with readiness to share from our own perspectives, we actually create a situation in which there is potential for change and development in all of us. Thus, the open, free, and respectful dialogue is an important way forward for the human community. But I would briefly like to mention another thing that also is important to our freedom. I would like to make a very simple observation as to our perception of our freedom in the context of the media society. Today, we live in a very complex, multifaceted, and rapidly changing media environment. We have more media sources and channels to choose from than most of us are aware of. As a tool to manage some of the media devices around us, we use a remote control. The remote control becomes an icon representing our own capability to choose from a wide spectrum of different inputs, be it news, sport, or entertainment. Thus, the remote control becomes a symbol of our freedom. It represents our feeling that we are free to choose what we would like to see, to read, and to listen to. Again, this brings us back to the question I have stated previously: is to feel free the same thing as to actually be free? What we do not see when we use the remote control are the processes going on behind the scene. While we experience more and more media options, the ownership of media industries are continually becoming more concentrated. and the processes of productions are increasingly put under commercial pressures. One could say that there are fewer and fewer companies determining more and more of our media sphere. I want to mention this example since it illustrates that it's not necessarily enough to feel that you are free. We need to strive to become free in a more genuine sense. But then, what can you do to become a more free person? I've already mentioned one important path, the open, respectful, and constructive dialogue with others. But there's one more thing I would like to mention here. As human beings, the languages we use to deal with life and reality often restrains us. It is difficult to go beyond the models, symbols, and concepts that we have learned. To reach another level of freedom, we need other languages. That is why other cultural forms of expression play such an important role in meetings organized by institutions like the Tällberg Foundation and the Sigtuna Foundation. To allow for new perspectives and new insights, poetry, music, literature, and art play an important role. These languages offer us new ways to perceive things and new ways to relate to the problems and challenges that we are dealing with. In conclusion, the dialogue transcending existing cultural and institutional boundaries, in combination with a multitude of cultural forms of expression, is perhaps the best way to free ourselves from the constraints we all experience in the context of our daily lives. It is my hope and my anticipation that all of us in the next few days here at the Tällberg Winter Forum will experience the freedom needed to reach change and development for ourselves and for the good of the world in which we live. Thank you.